Hello, welcome to another Chats with Carly, and today I'm so happy to introduce somebody actually I made a connection with through Facebook. I just love the power of social media. It's really brought so many women together. But yeah, I'm going to introduce you Michelle Green, and Michelle is a blogger and a housewife and is from Buckinghamshire, lives at home with her husband and two older children. But yeah, this is about life in lockdown from a well-being perspective, anything else that comes from this. So yeah, first of all, how are you and how are you doing in lockdown?
Hello, how am I doing? I'm fine. I'm coping, but I think I sort of made a conscious effort that I had to cope. But there's a lot of elements that are, I've really struggled to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause we've had a brief chat before this. I know that you suffer and openly admit that you suffer with periods of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
Myself, I suffer with that as well. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So you say you knew you had to cope. Did you almost go into this with that in mind, would you say?
Yeah, I think that I kind of had to make a conscious decision that there was nothing I could do to change it. Nothing was going to change. My son had to work from home. My husband, he has spent some time working at home, but he has an office that's separate to the house. It's about a 5-minute drive away. And he was able to sort of work out that he could be there by himself. So that's been a sort of, but it's definitely had a huge impact on our routine. And then my daughter was coming back from university. She's probably the easiest of them all, actually, because she helps me a lot around the house. But yeah, I just sort of recovered from a period of depression. So sort of Christmas, January, and probably into February, I had to sort of change my medication. I'd really been struggling. And then this came along and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be really tough. But I had to make a conscious decision that nothing's going to change. I've got to deal with it. We've just got to get through it as easily and as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, wow, I love that. Isn't it interesting that I know for myself, when you have these periods of depression, anxiety, that it can kind of come from nowhere, can't it? I'm assuming the winter months are probably a little bit like me, a little bit of SAD. Probably
Yeah.
you kind of see it coming. But COVID-19, nobody saw this coming. But yet you had your toolkit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I suppose. I mean, thank goodness that I had almost, I mean, it sounds mad, doesn't it? But because I'd had that problem over the Christmas period, which a lot of it is to do with the fact that, I've got everyone at home during that time. It becomes a very busy time, Christmas. We're all sort of being told, oh, it's fantastic, enjoy having the family at home. Well, for, a full-time mum, and it's actually quite challenging.
Yeah.
So that with the sort of influence of the weather and the sad, I really did struggle with it. But in some ways it kind of prepared me, because I dealt with that this year, that it kind of prepared me for right now. We're suddenly COVID-19 is, we heard rumblings about it, but I don't think anyone expected that it was going to affect us in quite the way that it did.
No, and like as you say, we heard I say it came out of nowhere. Actually, thinking back, it didn't. But I think we're maybe a bit blasé about it. It's almost like that.
Denial.
It's happening over there. It's not going to happen over here. And we've had this, haven't we? We've had like bird flu and
SARS.
nothing really came from that, did it? So we kind of probably did think, oh, we're okay.
Yeah, and I think even now, I still think there's an element of people sort of saying, oh, well, it's still happening out there, that it's still happening to other people, it's not happening to us. Although we've been told to lock down and change our lives and, social distancing, I still think that I think we do. We feel that we're living in a little bit of a bubble and that it almost doesn't apply to us. And yet it could so easily.
Yeah, a bubble. And I think it's almost, we are all kind of, it's funny, isn't it? There's been so many stages of lockdown from it all being quite a shock. And yeah, we've kind of got used to it, got into our bubble and feel quite safe and secure. And this is where we are not almost vulnerable, but we could so easily let our guard down, couldn't we, I think?
Yeah, and it is. And I think there is quite a confusing message, and I think, as I said to you when we were chatting beforehand, when we set the call up, I think this does have a huge implication on mental health. And I'm not so sure about this whole working at home approach. Now, I think that has a real benefit to women with children. Although I've been a full-time mum and housewife, I've also have done some work at home over the years, because my husband set up his own business and I did a lot of the admin for him. But I really worry about the implications, for example, on my son, who is 22, working by himself, in a log cabin in the garden. It's not, I don't think it's right for social interaction, and I don't think, and yet we're being told that this could be the new normal for quite some time going forward. And I think that has a whole implication on not only him, but us as a family. I mean, he's actually about to buy his own flat, which has been delayed due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
But, again, for his mental health, do I want him working by himself in a flat?
Living by yourself as well, where you can kind of keep tabs on him here, can't you, as such?
Yeah.
You can make sure.
I'm really concerned about the implications that the companies, he's been really lucky that he's continued working through lockdown. But I am really concerned about the ongoing implications of this for us as a family, but also for the young people. What's happened with schools, that they're not mixing, that social interaction. The implication for my daughter having missed a large proportion of her first year at university.
Oh, was it her first year? Yeah,
and actually when I look back, I think she really struggled with homesickness in September, and it took her quite a few months to settle down. And I think we just got to the point where she was feeling really settled. She's got into quite a nice routine. She's only a couple of hours away, so she knew that she could come home, and it was all working out. And she was really looking forward to the summer months. They were planning outings. She'd got made some really good friends, and then suddenly it's all gone. Had she been looking at September coming up being her first year, I think she'd have almost certainly ended up deferring, because one of the things that we really enjoyed last year was the whole build up to it, the preparation, the fun of going to IKEA, of going up to visit her student accommodation, of, meeting everyone. So for the students starting this year, if they're a bit nervous, like my daughter was, that's going to be a lot to deal with. So I think we're going to see a real knock-on effect for students.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. There's lots of talk about mental health being the second pandemic and being a pandemic in itself, which it was at that point anyway. It was a breaking point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what I love about these chats, actually. We say about being our own little bubble. We can't see it from our point of view, but I'm just loving connecting with other people and hearing their experience, because I'd not thought of the implications for that sort of age group, for this sort of uni generation, I guess.
And so the uni students haven't really had any attention in the media. It just seems to have been virtually forgotten, and Emily has had confirmation that she will be going back in September, but she's at a very small private college where she's doing her degree, so it's a slightly different environment, and I think that they will be able to manage it much better than the bigger campuses. And she's training to work with children. So again, if the schools are back, then she should be able to go back. But, I think actually the more I talk to other families, it is a really unclear situation for the students. We've paid 3-4 months of empty accommodation.
Yeah.
That's still a debt, that she's going to have that she never used.
Yes, it has implications, a knock-on effect for yourself financially, doesn't it, as well? There's so many questions in this, and I guess questions that can't be answered at this moment in time.
And I think I've had to take the attitude, well, I am the sort of person that likes to know what's going on, and I want to plan, and I want to, and I can't with this,
So how does that, how has that affected you then? Just, it sounds so similar to myself, when you do sort of have mental health, well-being, things like anxiety and depression, you do feel like you need to micromanage yourself a little bit, I think. Has that affected you, that you can't plan and that things are unknown? Has it raised any anxiety, or do you suffer with anxiety as well?
Yes, I do, although not so much. I'm on HRT, and that helps a little bit with that aspect of it. So
Yeah.
I have had. I mean, going back into my 20s, and I had very bad anxiety, but it is still part of it. And I think that with having the family at home, it's changed my routine and it's changed the structure of my life. The things that I always have in place to be able to manage my low mood and anxiety, I've not been able to have those. So I've not been able to have quiet time by myself. I've not been able to have the house organised and clean and tidy, and
Yeah.
there's a constant flow of traffic. I'm now feeding 4 people 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
All the extra washing and ironing on top of that. I know they're adults, and I kind of have a rule that you do your own breakfast and you do your own lunch, and there's certain rules around the washing and what have you, and my daughter does her own, but that's still taken away. You evolve, don't you? You have small children, and then you have young children, then you have teenagers, and your life evolves. And I'd got to the stage where my life I was finally getting to a point where there was space for me.
For you, yeah.
It's not there, it's taken away. And yet, you try and explain that to someone, they say, oh yeah, but you've got a lovely life, you've got a beautiful house, you've got the garden to sit in, your children are fantastic. Yeah, they are, but it's not the life I expected to be having this year.
No, and it's really difficult, isn't it? Because I find that I really try to sort of encourage people to do this, do it myself, that when things are feeling tough, to practice gratitude, look at everything you've got. But it still niggles at me as well that I need my space.
Yeah.
I need that space. And it's really difficult because you end up feeling a little bit guilty, don't you? Thinking that you should be more grateful for what you've got and what's going on. But actually, this is just a really hard situation.
It's just really, it's headspace. As soon as I get, particularly mornings, I like mornings to myself to do all my jobs. As soon as I get a morning to myself, I just can feel that sort of calmness much more come over me. Whereas because they're all in and out and they've changed their routine, there's this constant sort of tension, because I haven't got that headspace.
Yeah, and it's the thing, isn't it, of people say about self-care, putting your own oxygen mask on first. It is so true, isn't it, that if you feel better in yourself, you've got that headspace, you can give more of you, can't you? You can operate better.
Totally. They'd really benefit from it if I had the headspace, but try and explain it.
Yeah, so are you managing to get any? Are you finding any time to yourself?
I think I am, but it's not planned. So all of a sudden I'll think, oh God, they're all out or busy or in meetings, and suddenly I've got an hour. Whereas I would rather know that every morning between 9 and 12 I have to myself. But yeah, I don't, it is there, but it has to be spontaneous. It's like suddenly it's there.
Yeah, which is nice in a way, but yeah, if you're quite the planner. So what are your learnings from this that you will take forward, whether it is managing your sort of anxiety and depression going forward, or just as a household? Yeah, just generally, what are your learnings when we do return to the new normal?
From it, I'm not really sure, to be honest, because so interestingly, what I've learned a lot, is that a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm gonna live a much quieter life. I've learned that that we shouldn't all be rushing around, and that we should take a bit more space for ourselves. Interestingly, for me, this has been probably a busier time. Not for some people, it's been a quieter time.
Yeah.
Me, it's probably got busier. And actually, I was always one of those mums that actually always had quite a quiet life, because I was a full-time mum at home. I didn't ever, so I don't feel that my life, it's changed around me, but I haven't particularly changed. So actually, that being having to get used to being at home hasn't actually been that much of a big deal. So I think it is really just about, for me, is that I've got to learn to cope with those outside influences, I suppose, really, if that makes sense. That that I can only change myself. I can't change the plans that my family need to make, because they've as much right to live here as I do. But it is difficult. It is really difficult.
It is. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It sounds like you are coping really well. To say that you've just come from that period of depression going into this actually sounds like it's not perked you up, but you know, it just sounds like maybe do you feel more resilient from it, do you think?
Maybe I do feel more resilient. I think it's also made me sort of look at myself a little bit, and sort of think, okay, so I can't change them, so I've got to change myself. There have been days where I felt really, really fed up, just not depressed as such, but just really sad, just really disappointed by the whole thing. But, you know, as I say, I think I've just, you know, I can't, there's nothing I can do about it. So there's no point in being depressed about it, and there's no point in being angry and taking it out on everyone else, because we can't change it. So I have had to accept that.
Accepting it for what it is. Yeah,
it's one benefit. I have managed to, whereas I thought my son was leaving home sort of probably February, March time, you know, maybe I'll look back on this time and think, well, you know, because once he goes, he'll be gone. You know, he's a boy, he's very independent. So, you know, I am trying to enjoy this last little bit of nurturing time with him. And I would rather him be at home during this time than having been by himself somewhere. So I think, okay, so I'll see the benefits of having my son at home for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I love that. That's all we can do, isn't it? It's just practicing the gratitude, looking at the positives, and just doing the best we can with it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fab. Well, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to chat and get, just as I said, another different viewpoint on it. So yeah, thank you, and I'll let you go and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much, and you.
Thank you. Bye.